Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Risk Matrix. Happy November. Here we are in November of 2025, and we're ready to go with some new episodes for you. Halloween is gone. We're now in cruising towards Thanksgiving and the holidays, so hope everybody's well. And we're ready to jump right into it. Oh, yeah. James is ready to eat. Hey, James.
Hey, I'm ready to eat, and we're in the heart of college football season, man. They remember the games in November. It's been the best football season ever. So, I hate it's
Don't
coming
jinx
to
my
an end,
pride.
but roll tide,
Don't-
baby. This is the time of year I love. You get weather starting to change, got the fire going right now. Be with family and friends inside, watching some football, eating some turkey
That's
stuffings,
right.
and getting ready for Santa.
Oh, and you got a young one, and I have a couple of young ones too in my household, and getting around Christmas time, uh, it gets to be really kind of cool around here, decorations and etc. So let's jump right in. As you guys know, we are powered by Veriforce. Thank you, Veriforce, for powering each episode of the Risk Matrix and helping us get the word out there on safety and risk in the workplace and our different topics and our different guests. Today we're going to talk about H₂S, which our friend James here is on the ANSI
Z390,
Z359.1 390.
Z390.1 committee.
390.1 committee. So we're going to get to that in a second. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about things that have been in the headlines, James.
Sure.
What are you seeing out there?
Well, if it hasn't been resolved by the time this airs, the government is still shut down. Uh, because of that, you don't see as much coming out of OSHA related to OSHA inspections, program inspections, things of that nature. But I want to remind everyone, even though that OSHA is closed for informal conferences, things of that nature, they're still doing investigations related to serious injuries and fatalities. If you have a reportable, you still must report it.
That's
That's
right.
things
That's right.
like death, hospitalizations, loss of an eye, amputations, things of that nature. So they're still open for business for that. And you can make contact as far as reporting either to your local area office, the national hotline at 1-800-321-OSHA, or via the web address.
Yeah. So I don't know if your favorite industry there, oil and gas, is like construction. We're getting towards the end of the year. We're trying to wrap up a lot of projects before the cold hits, and we do see a rise in accidents and incidents around this time of the year. People start to get fatigued, working long hours, especially some of my clients. They need to get in out of the cold, and a lot of their stuff is cold dependent. More, they need the heat, and so you know, make sure your workers and your staff are tuned in and fit to work, ready to go, and all those things. And on a related note to OSHA, James, we still have that OSHA proposal out there for the general duty clause to not be applied to the high risk industries like arts and entertainment. But there are some people out there that are a little bit nervous about that coming out. They're saying it's not going to be just arts and entertainment that will be affected. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens once we get back into legislative session and you start seeing the federal courts working, processing some of these cases, what some of the decisions that have been made, how those past decisions setting precedent affect some of the proposed regulations by OSHA. Um, I'm a proponent of if we need a regulation, let's make a regulation, right? And the OSHA regulatory process is long, it's arduous, it's often challenged in court. Um, I hear what people are saying related to the arts and industries, the entertainment industries. I see some of the argument that OSHA is making to clawing some of it back. But let's keep in mind what this is all about. It's really about protecting the worker. And I really encourage safety professionals during the comment periods, executives and organizations. If you're passionate about this, if you're passionate enough to listen to the Risk Matrix podcast, hey, let your voice be heard with regards to the debate on these proposed regulations. Because once it's codified, until a federal court says it's not, it's the law. So during the input period, if you got some time over the holidays, things, man, check out what some of these proposed regulations are, and
Yeah.
let us hear what you got to say.
So I agree with you, James. I think you need to get involved. The Federal Register, when things are in session and people are putting proposed rule changes out there, new regulations, etc., they're getting posted in the Federal Register, which you can access online, and take a look at what's being posted and give your comments. I also want to put a plug in too. One of the things that I use for interpreting regulations, right, are letters of interpretation, and we only get those if what? If people write into OSHA and they ask for clarification on how a regulation should be applied or is applied in practice. So, if you don't know about letters of interpretation, you can go on the OSHA website, look at those. They basically are people like you and I that write in and they ask these questions, burning questions, on how a regulation might apply to them in their industry, or as a whole towards across industries. So take a look at those. I think that's a really important thing to know. Is if you're going to get involved, get involved. Help us all out.
Absolutely. Let your voice be heard.
So today, James, we're going to talk about something that you're way more in tune with than I am, because you sit on the committee for H₂S, right? And as you know, Veriforce has a course coming out, a revision to a course called H₂S Clear, which is applicable to all industries. I know that it's near and dear to the hearts of people that work in oil and gas, but a lot of construction workers, utility workers, etc., also take this course to bring their people up to speed on H₂S. So, can you give us kind of a rundown of what the committee does, what it's done most recently, and then how this applies to what Veriforce is doing?
Well, the ANSI Z390.1 committee uh, helps promulgate the ANSI standard for recommended practices for H₂S training. And there's probably not another course or topic that comes to mind that there's more confusion about when it comes to hydrogen sulfide training for workers that have the potential to be exposed to hydrogen sulfide. Looking back over the last decade, there's been 60 people that have lost their lives across all those various industries that you just mentioned in hydrogen sulfide activities. I myself have been involved in multiple injury, multiple fatality incident related to hydrogen sulfide exposure. And that was outside of oil and gas. That was in a power plant back in 2017. Most recently, 2024, the ANSI committee met, worked for several years in getting an updated standard. We have an updated standard out. And I would encourage you to look at that standard. Now, one of the things that a lot of people are not aware of is OSHA doesn't have a vertical standard for hydrogen sulfide, and they're shocked about that.
Stop right there. And we've got like a broad base of practitioners that listen to our show, right? So, can you explain real quickly vertical versus horizontal standards?
Okay, so in this instance, think of lead, for example. There's a standard for lead. There's a standard for uh, asbestos. There is a standard for silica. There's a standard for a lot of chemicals related to exposure, but there is not a standard for hydrogen sulfide. If OSHA wants to cite you for exceeding their exposure limits related to hydrogen sulfide, they're going to cite you on either the respiratory protection standard, or they're going to cite you under the exposure limit standard, for which for general industry is 1910-1000 Z Table 2.
What other way can they cite you, James?
Probably HASCOM.
They might also be able to cite you under the general duty clause if they use the incorporated by reference section, which is found in both the construction and the general industry standard. Unless I missed something there, right?
Well,
Because I'm sure that the H₂S standard is probably incorporated by reference into
believe it or
OSHA's.
not, it's not.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not. It's not incorporated by, which is surprising.
It is surprising.
But I have seen general duty clause citations related to hydrogen sulfide exposure. So OSHA's got a variety of tools of enforcement mechanisms um, for when workers are exposed above an occupational exposure limit, a recognized occupational exposure limit. And certainly we don't want to get to where we're getting into trouble with OSHA because we exposed workers above, in some instances, the accepted industry practice of 10 parts per million. In the instance when OSHA gets involved in that kind of situation, typically it's because somebody has been overcome with H₂S, they're hospitalized, or in the worst case scenario, there's fatalities. And that makes it one of the most deadly gases out there. And ironically, one of the ones that has the most confusion. You would think we would have a standard. When we talked about coming in here in our preamble, if you will, to this session of the podcast, we talked about. I said OSHA needs to make standards. If we want to protect people, make rules. Well, we don't have a standard when it comes to H₂S, which just really mind-boggling to me.
Right. Well, I mean, with the way that OSHA makes rules and how quickly things wind through Congress and our government, I think we sometimes have to make do with what we got, right?
So
So right now we're making do with what we got.
enter in ANSI. That's what the committee's here for. ANSI has a recommended practice on what you should train your workers in to prepare them to be exposed to hydrogen sulfide above the REL from NIOSH of 10 parts per million, or the PEL under the construction standard of 10 parts per million. And 10 parts per million is something you see by API and all these other stuff. But nevertheless, the committee meets to define what the qualifications of instructors are, what a course should look like, and what a competency should look like for students that have graduated from the course. Now, one of the things I always want people to understand is this is a recommended practice. It is not the law. It is not the law. Our committee says we recommend you train on these topics. The course be between 3.5 to 4 hours long, and it be instructor led. That is not the law. Okay? But I tell people all the time, you and I do this all the time, right? If we're talking about what the law is or what the standard is, we're usually getting ready for an OSHA inspection regarding some type of incident, wrongful death, gross negligence claims, litigation, depositions, etc. If you go out on a limb by yourself, understand somebody will saw it off behind you. Yeah. So I'd like to give just a little bit of history, if I may, about why this course was developed.
Okay.
Okay.
I just had a little insertion there. I just wanted to say what we're finding, though, when things aren't the law, is that people on the standards committees are bringing things into alignment with each other.
Right.
So when you say instructor-led, course length, components of what knowledge points, etc., those are the same types of things that are being put into the training standard as well, right?
Absolutely.
What should be instructor-led, what shouldn't be instructor-led, et cetera. And so, you might not be hung on the regulations, but if you're not following best practices of 95, 99% of the workforce, you're looking for a world of hurt there too.
Well,
so
even though OSHA may not cite you, it doesn't mean it's not going to come up in litigation. And again, I want to empower workers with the knowledge, skills, and abilities to go out there and work around this deadly gas and do so safely. If somebody's asking you about your training and they say, well, we did the 30-minute H₂S class, we did an hour H₂S class, we watched a video or whatever. Well, then the next question is, why did you not decide to do a course that's modeled after the ANSI Z390.1 standard that's recommended by some of the top safety professionals and industry experts in hydrogen sulfide in the world? How are you going to answer that question at the deposition? So while OSHA may not cite you, if you're out there by yourself, remember, we just had an episode that said, can you defend your training? You're going to be defending why you didn't do it. And so I highly recommend that people consider utilizing course like Veriforce's H₂S Clear for their H₂S training, and that program meets the ANSI Z390.1 standard.
Okay.
All right.
So you want to give a little bit of history.
So some history on this. Back around, 2012, 2014, we got together as a master trainer group at Veriforce, and we talked to the product development team about what we were seeing in the industry. And just about every location we go to in midstream and upstream oil and gas, operators hiring clients are requiring workers to have an H₂S course. But when you examine their cards, it might say ANSI Z390.1 on the card, 29 CFR 1910-134, the respiratory protection standard. But when you talk to the students or you talk to the instructors, it was all kinds of different trainings, 30-minute, hour-long courses, different contents. The instructors had different qualifications. And we said, look, to be responsible in this industry, to fulfill our mission of bringing workers home safe from high-hazard jobs, let's build a course that meets the ANSI requirement. That way we have a tool to put in instructors and safety professionals in companies' toolboxes. And that's how this was born, right? Training development's difficult. I'm not a training program developer. I'm very thankful that Veriforce has a product development team that can give me a program that's based on adult learning principles so that workers leave the course with the knowledge, skills, and abilities necessary to go out and work around this deadly gas.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the high points of the guideline. Okay, the ANSI standard. What are the things, if you had to pick the top 5 or top number whatever of things that you think are key for people to know? What are they?
I think number one, a gas monitor is not PPE. Number one thing we want people to know, the gas monitor is not PPE.
Because once it goes off,
you'd be just as dead with it going off. And I hear this all the time that we give them a monitor. Yeah, we gave them a monitor, but understand you can be just as dead with the monitor going off. I've experienced that. Their monitor went off, but 2 were dead and 4 went to the hospital and fought for their lives for 2 weeks in ICU.
Yep.
So monitoring is an essential element of protecting workers from hydrogen sulfide exposure, other chemicals exposures. But it's not PPE. PPE protects you. That'd be number one. Okay. Number two is teaching this in conjunction with the respiratory protection elements that workers need to know and safety professionals need to know. So that's kind of your neck of the woods, right? You're an industrial hygienist, respiratory protection. So let me throw a question back to you, if you will. I'll try not to put you on the spot here, but asking you the same thing from the respiratory protection standard. If there was one thing that you wish people would know, what would it be from the respiratory protection standard related to exposures like hydrogen sulfide?
Well, hydrogen sulfide, right? What type of respirator to pick, right? For the hazardous atmosphere, which is often either trending on IDLH, immediately dangerous to life and health, or is there, right? I think a lot of people, there's a misnomer that, if I just throw on a half-face mask with some kind of canister on it, that's going to protect me, right? And I see it all the time in the construction industry. We go over, there's probably 15 different kinds of canisters that go on an air purifying respirator. And there are things that air purifying respirators don't cover. Supplied air respirators don't cover, right? If you don't know what's in that hole, what's the highest level of PPE that you have to be in?
Supplied air.
Supplied air, right? And often I would think in a lot of these H₂S situations that supplied air is necessary.
Absolutely. And that's the second thing that I think is most important coming out of this H₂S training is putting your brain around IDLH atmospheres and how you determine what is an IDLH atmosphere. So, examples of an IDLH atmosphere. Number one, you don't know. You know what it is, and the concentration of the contaminant exceeds the IDLH value as published on the safety data sheet and found in the NIOSH pocket guide. That's something safety professionals sometimes get confused. OSHA has the PELs, but the IDLHs are published by NIOSH, right?
And NIOSH, you can get the printed guide right from the government printing office for free, or you can get it on an app for your phone, or you can get it right off the website. So there's no excuse for saying I don't have. There are several ways to get the NIOSH guide, and if you don't have it as a safety professional, I strongly recommend that you find a way to either have it on your phone or have a printed copy available.
And then the last element is oxygen deficient atmospheres. So, in combination with H₂S, there is a portion of the respiratory protection standard. I don't want to bore people with standards and things of this nature, but in this short paragraph lies life and death. Okay? I got two guys who'd be alive today if we would understood this paragraph. There are 60 people in the last 10 years who would be alive today if we understood this paragraph, right? And this is what it says. The employer shall identify and evaluate the respiratory hazards in the workplace. This evaluation shall include a reasonable estimate of employee exposures to respiratory hazards and identification of the contaminant's chemical state and physical form. Where the employer cannot identify or reasonably estimate the employee exposure, the employer must 100% of the time consider the atmosphere to be IDLH.
Yep.
So activities we see in the oil and gas industry and in the construction industry and in other industries. Tank cleaning, tank gauging, thieving operations, line breaking operations.
Yep.
You as a safety professional, you as the employer have to be able to make a reasonable estimate. Now, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna say my Haswapper brain is gonna kick in here, right? And a reasonable estimate involves doing, a site walk, a historical site usage, what kind of chemicals come with, for example, in construction industry, working with utilities. What are you most likely to see? What do the surrounding properties look like? You're looking at everything to estimate what you can see, and oftentimes that's not done, right? We think we have a 4-gas meter, we throw it in the hole, nothing goes off, we're fine. Not true.
So check this out. Reasonable is a legal term. All of our laws are built upon the reasonable man standard. What does reasonable mean? What most people would choose if given the same set of facts. Why is it against the law to murder people? Because all of us that are reasonable think it should be unlawful to take someone else's life, right?
Right.
So, reasonable estimate. Give you a situation. In a fatality event we investigated several years ago, workers were exposed to H₂S and killed after doing a line break. They had performed that same task during an outage, turnaround, if you will, period of maintenance activity, every 12 to 18 months for the last 25 years. all that was supposed to be in that pipe was water. That's what it had been for the last 25 years. They did the line break, they killed 2, sent 4 to the hospital. Was it reasonable for them to assume that the atmosphere inside that pipe was the same that it had been for the previous 25 years?
You
I
know
tell
what
you
I'm
what
going to say?
OSHA said, no. They said, you've not
No.
been in this pipe. You've not been in this system, for the last
If
12 months. Conditions change. Things change. That's why we put it in there. So my warning, my caution, it with tears in my eyes. If you cannot monitor it, you need to treat that as an unknown atmosphere. And when you're doing your line breaks, you're doing your thieving, you're opening these hatches, you're exposing these workers, they need to be under air till you can prove otherwise.
That's right.
In this lays life and death. And that's not just my opinion. It says where the employer cannot identify or reasonably estimate the employee exposure, the employer shall. Means you must consider the atmosphere to be IDLH. The only respirator you can wear in IDLH atmosphere is supplied air. So let's back up to that term reasonable. You know who's going to get to decide if you were reasonable or not?
The jury.
The jury. You want to pick a jury? I don't mean this offensive to anybody. Next time you're at Walmart, pick the first 12 people that walk out of Walmart. That's a jury. You get a mixture, cross-section of society. You do not want to have to be defending yourself in a gross negligence or wrongful death claim because you didn't understand this section of the respiratory protection standard. So, the other thing I'd like to say about this, about standards in general, OSHA standards are boring. I have trouble sleeping. Do you have trouble sleeping? Most people middle-aged, we have trouble sleeping, right? Hey, if you want a surefire way to go to sleep, break out Subpart O and start reading about machine guarding. That'll put you to sleep. But I'm telling you, as someone who's experienced this firsthand, I am begging you to read the respiratory protection standard. If you're responsible for people in the field that may come into H₂S or any other hazardous chemical, you need to read the respiratory protection standard. The respiratory protection standard is written in like an 8th grade level. Anybody can understand it. Certainly the jury can understand it. But I don't know, Doc.
So I agree. I agree with you there, and I'm just going to couple it with know your chemicals, right? Know the chemicals you're bringing into the space. Do a really good background check of what might be in the space. If you don't know, go with the most stringent protocol that you can go with, because a lot of these things, and H₂S is one of them. A little dab will do you, and when it gets you, it's quick.
Normally,
So
the people who get killed are not just the entrants. 60% of all fatalities involving like confined
are people
spaces,
who go in the
confined
rescue.
spaces is would-be rescuers.
Yep.
People that go down in manholes that get overcome by H₂S, and then somebody else comes, and I think the most recent one I read about, it was a rescue. My buddy's down there, I got to help my buddy, and then we killed 2 or 3 people, and that's the lessons of confined space, and certainly that's the lessons of H₂S. But I want to make one observation about standards. Typically, this is how we read standards. Where does it say they need to be fit tested? Where does it say they need to be clean shaven? Where does it say that? And we don't look at it in context, right? This is one you need to look at in context because there are some language inside that respiratory protection standard that create responsibilities, particularly for safety professionals. For example, it says the employer shall designate a program administrator who is qualified by training or experience to administer and evaluate the effectiveness of the respiratory protection program. So when most safety professionals figure out they're the person that's responsible for
When they're
implementing
in
all
court
this.
and they say, who's this name right here on this
Yeah.
policy, right? Or maybe it's somebody that's not even the safety person. Maybe it's the HR person or the person in the office, right? But I don't want to digress too much into the respiratory standard here. I want to get down because you're from the horse's mouth here on the H₂S standard, and you said you met in 2024. What things changed? What things got more stringent? What are the things that we can see in this new iteration of the H₂S course, any H₂S course that meets the Z390?
One of the things the committee had to address was the evolving technology. When the 2017 version of the ANSI standard came out, we never thought of Zoom or Teams or that type of method of communication. And all of us believe, because this course is dealing with such a deadly gas, almost 100% we believe it should be instructor led. Not against e-learning in certain situations, but it's been instructor led since its founding, and it continues to be instructor led. But what we allowed for and what COVID opened our eyes to is there may be times we cannot be physically present with each other, right? So if we can't be physically present, let's leverage the technology. That was one of the changes.
I just want to insert something here, and I think one of the reasons that we say instructor led, or that the committee probably said instructor led, is that when you're dealing with something that's super hazardous, right, and it's critical that employees understand and get the nature of what's going on in their workplace, or what's going on with this particular contaminant or whatnot, they need to be able to ask questions of the instructor who can give feedback on things that they're doing in the field, or tasks that they may be undertaking, or places where just a broad range of questions. That's the advantage of instructor led, right? Is that you get somebody with the knowledge in order to answer the questions, so that people don't make mistakes in field, or they make less mistakes in the field because they've been able to ask the burning questions about how they protect themselves.
Absolutely. That's exactly why the committee feels very strongly about this being an instructor led course. A generic version is not going to satisfy the intent of the committee. It's not going to satisfy OSHA under the HAZCOM standard related to physical and health hazard training you have to do. And we want you to add what your control mechanisms are and what your emergency response mechanism. You asked me a question earlier. What are the key takeaways? I gave you two. I'm going to give you another. When we have alarms go off, personal alarms, alarms on the rig or inside a chemical plant, etc., we teach our workers to go crosswind and upwind and get to the must area. I would highly encourage safety professionals, managers, leadership to test that theory. Okay? It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to have drilled it. You don't rise to the occasion. You always descend to the level of your training. And the way these things happen is they just happen. We're working and it just happens. I got to know what I'm going to do. It has to be muscle memory. And I like to do this exercise with the classes I teach. And I'll tell them to get in class. At some point in the day, I'm just going to yell gas, gas, gas. Then I want you to stop breathing. Because if you take a deep breath, like we were in the swimming pool, to hold your breath, I'm going to kill you right there. Boom, you're dead. Then briskly get up from your chair and get to our muster area. How far do you think most people get before they have to stop and take a breath? Because I tell them, if you have to take a breath, I want you to stop, right? You stop in your tracks. How far do you think most people get?
Not very far, hardly out of their desk.
At best, 30 feet. 30 feet. Yep. The only dude I saw do this one time years ago down in Morgan City, Louisiana, he's a Navy diver. This guy gets up walks out the classroom, crosses the compound, which is about 50 yards, goes in the break room, gets a Coke, comes back out, walks to the flagpole, and then well, most of us don't have that kind of lung function, right? Or are trained to hold our breaths like that. So in a critical situation, can you do what we're asking you to do? You need to drill that. You need to drill it. See if it's actually possible. I'm a huge fan of the 5-minute escape path. Why? Because it's positive pressure. I put that over my head. Doesn't matter if I'm clean shaven or not. Doesn't matter. And I can get a lot of places, even as out of shape and as old and arthritic and 9-toes that I am. I can get a pretty good distance in 5 minutes. So those are some of the takeaways that I have. I won't walk through the entire standard, but those are some of the things that the committee feels very strongly about and getting it out there to workers, to safety professionals, to people who are looking at what their training programs are going to be next year. The other thing that comes from the standard, it needs to be refreshed annually. We also talked a little bit about the qualifications of the instructor. We highly recommend that instructors go through a train the trainer course. Veriforce has a train the trainer course in which we teach instructors not only how to teach the course, but adult learning techniques so that you get the best course delivery. We allow for experience as a substitute for the train the trainer, but I always look at this if I have to defend my training. James, what course did you teach your workers that you're responsible for? We taught Veriforce H₂S Clear, which is modeled after and compliant with ANSI Z390.1. So we know we've got a good course. What qualified you to teach that course? I've completed the train the trainer from Veriforce, who's a nationally and worldwide recognized leader in training program development, yada, 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 right? So it's not the law. It's not the law. Okay? OSHA can't cite you. But I highly recommend if you have any potential to expose workers to H₂S that you teach a ANSI Z390.1 compliant course. And certainly Veriforce has a great one. Been teaching it for years.
Well, thank you, James. I know I kind of was lacking on this. I know you're the expert, so I'm really glad.
I don't know if I'm an expert, but
we could talk this through. But I just want to, as we lead things out today, you guys should check out our long list of episodes that we've done in the past. We give a lot of tips and tricks of the trade for safety and risk professionals. Just because it isn't law doesn't mean it's not good practice or it's not something that's going to get you in trouble in a civil lawsuit or whatnot. So we talk a lot about that. Today we talked about letters of interpretation. We talked about things are incorporated by reference. We talked about horizontal versus vertical standards. So there's a lot that goes into that. We talked about the respiratory standard. So if you have any questions on those things, we've got a whole list of episodes that you can go back and listen to. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, list them off there, James. We're on YouTube,
Apple Podcasts, Veriforce's YouTube channel, our own LinkedIn page that just recently launched. Thank you, the lovely and talented Amanda, our producer. Thank you for putting that up for us. If you're not following us individually, or even if you are, go over there and like our LinkedIn page, the Risk Matrix Podcast. Now I want to challenge everybody. If you learned something today, you must subscribe. If you had fun today, you must subscribe.
If you just
like college football, you must subscribe. So we hit one of those three things for everybody that listens to us. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button. That way you can be notified when new episodes drop. We do this for you. Dr. Martin and I do this for you. We enjoy what we do in occupational safety and health. We embrace Veriforce's mission to bring workers home safe from high hazard jobs. And look, it's all about getting better. They say safety's a practice, right? Because we never arrive. It's about getting better. And I hope over the last 2.5 years, we've offered some value to our listeners in which they've gotten better in the practice of safety.
So thanks for that, James, and thanks to our listeners again. Take us on out.
Hey, like I said, thank you. And until next time, you cats keep bringing workers home safe from high hazard jobs. Roll Tide, baby. Out.